Hi, this is Ryan, and before we get started, I just wanted to alert you that this is podcast 2 of 2 of our ongoing 50 Shades Freed coverage. If you haven't listened to the first one, it's available, so make sure you listen to that first one and then come back and join us. With that, let's get started. Hi, you've reached the Signal Watch. Film, comics, television, sci-fi, superheroes, noir, history, and more. Join us as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. And I haven't worked out how I do it. And we're back. And we're back. So, I mean, we can definitely cycle back to the overarching issues of how this movie relates to Me Too, and I am positive we will as we get through the plot of 50 Shades Freed. I would not argue that this is the movie where they pull out of the nosedive. I would not argue that this is the movie where you're like, yeah, these people, they really belong together.
Right. Yeah. To just give like the quickest of recaps of where we are in the narrative arc of this couple. At the end of the movie, that was previous, the 50 Shades Darker, Christian had just proposed to Anna on the family's estate, and there were fireworks in the sky, and then I think the last shot, if I remember correctly, was the menacing Jack Hyde watching in the distance, being all creepy. Yeah. And that was the end of the movie. And then we start this film with the wedding of Anna Steele and Christian Grey. And it sounds like it was just a few weeks after the end of the previous film. Mm-hmm. So just from the narrative, that the characters give about timeline, that's it seems to just be a few weeks. And then they go on a honeymoon,
which looked amazing, by the way. That was my favorite part of the movie.
Legit, yeah.
Oh wow, that must have been some great B unit, work to do. Oh, they got this out of working on these movies. Good for them.
Right, somebody's got to have a win here. So good.
It was a Paris, and I think Greece. I think that's where the other place they went.
Yeah, that was beautiful. But that's kind of the segue from the second film to the third film is they skipped over all the wedding planning and just got right to the wedding and honeymoon.
Mm-hmm. They moved really fast because, from what I could tell, they didn't talk about whether she would work.
Right.
Anything about what home life would be like.
Right.
And a key element. Children's.
Yep. They did not talk about children. And then when they started talking about children, that conversation went south real fast. She wanted some. He was a bit more ambivalent. There you go.
Yeah. He seemed to be buying time.
Yeah.
At best.
Right.
Which also, much like a gun that you see in the first act, once children and the possibility of children is mentioned, you kind of know where the movie's going.
Right.
Sorry, spoilers.
Yeah.
Everything about this movie, to me, felt like some sort of foregone conclusion from the ending of the second movie. There were, just from a movie standpoint, no surprises. The third act, as they say, is often very difficult. It's often the the hardest part to write is you try and pull all the threads together. There was no arc across the movie that made me feel like we were building towards anything, which is ironic because the poster says be here for the climax, but I was just like, when what was the ending of the movie was occurring, was just waiting for the next thing to occur, because that's how the movies work.
Right. And this goes back to what we were talking about last time. These are soap operas.
Oh, yeah.
These are soap opera movies.
Once you said that, like, I was like, oh, watching this movie.
Yeah, that's you know, like, that helps me, actually. And once again, that is a genre of entertainment developed for women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is what it is. And, you know, we use it as sort of a derogatory term. It's like, oh, this soap opera, blah, blah, blah. You know, it doesn't have an arc because it's intended to go on and on and on. And it's just like, it instead of an arc, it's a string of little story gems, mm-hmm. things that happen. And you could make an argument that that's kind of how life is, because life doesn't necessarily have an arc. Sometimes life is just a string of things that happen, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. But that's not satisfying to a lot of people. A lot of people want to see an arc. They want to see a trajectory. They want to see meaningful change. And we don't really see that. You see some kind of behavioral markers change in Christian Grey specifically, where he's like less controlling-ish, sort of.
Well, the thing you really got from this movie that the prior movies failed to convey as well, like got it more on the second viewing, is he has figured out his kink is her pushing back on him. Which, how it took 25 women to get to that point, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where he was meeting people that were this... Anyway, it's fictional.
Yeah.
But...
Apparently, you know, alternative dating sites don't exist in this universe. You know, or maybe he couldn't, you know, I don't know, blah, 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 flip phone. Anyway.
But they make a big point in that first portion when they're on the Riviera. I'm assuming that's where they were. I don't know. I don't know Europe.
Yeah. Exotic beach locale number 2.
Yes, where you were able to be topless, and she wished to be, and I think actually for fairly pragmatic reasons, he asked her not to be, but he should have explained the pragmatic reason, which was you don't want someone taking your picture and putting it on the front of a tabloid your first week of marriage, probably. Which she could have then debated, but that was never an option given to her because he's Christian Grey and these are in E.L. James books. So.
Right. Yeah, he explained it rather late in the game after she had already done it. That was the thing that was kind of funny. It was like the cat's out of the bag, so, or, you know, the cats, plural, I don't know. But at any rate, it was just like, you could have said that earlier and you could have given her a choice. Maybe she wants her rack all over the place. Who knows? Like, yeah, that's not for him to say, because it's an assertion of possession over her body that she may or may not consent to.
Which we should talk actually about the unforeseen, foreshadowed jealousy that he shows,
right,
upon them being married.
Right, and that's really quite peculiar, given that in the previous film he had picked out a very slinky silver silk dress for her to wear to this masquerade charity ball thing, and you know. It's just strange that all of a sudden now is the time for modesty. Mm-hmm. But it's not that strange if you view a woman's body as your possession. You know. Yeah.
So she in pretty short order, they return because of a server fire that goes nowhere. Right. I forgot about the fire until now.
Right. No. It was caused by Jack Hyde, mm-hmm. our apparent nemesis, mm-hmm. and he used it to cover his theft of some data related to the Grey family.
Right.
Although it apparently wasn't that covered because they could tell immediately that that's what he did. So
I was so thrown off from a basic IT standpoint, I assumed they were literally talking about other kinds of files of some sort. I guess that was tied to the server fire.
Right.
He was covered up by burning. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Well, I know that's not necessarily how computers work, but it's how these computers work in this film. So, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the bomb was a flask that they glued some stuff to.
I believe you. Yeah, some kind of alarm clock stuck to a flask. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So she decides, or it takes it for granted, as I would think I think she's 23, 24 years old, something like that. That she's gonna go have her career, and not, the I'm gonna stay home and maybe be a philanthropist or whatever was definitely suddenly open to her, but nothing had been discussed.
Right.
And so she goes back to work, and her job, she is supposedly earned. I'll just take it for granted she's just amazing, because everyone keeps telling us how amazing she is across all three movies. That she's a great fiction editor, and she is elevated to be the fiction editor of this small press, which maybe. And there's some false tension thrown out there with the HR head. And then Christian doesn't necessarily want her working. And when she's actually doing her job, he barges in and gets very angry because she's talking to a handsome author, played by the guy who plays Superman on Supergirl.
Yeah, and that was just so strange because, at Grey House, I don't recall seeing anybody on staff there that wasn't a hot chick.
Right. Yeah.
And all of a specific type, for that matter. And it was just like, okay, so you hire a look, and that's okay, I guess. Sure. Sexual harassment, panda sees all. That painting. But she can't sit on a sofa with a foot between her and a guy who she's encountering in a professional way without it being a problem.
Yeah.
That's quite odd.
Yeah. There were a lot of indications that they had rushed into marriage, and the way they were arguing, the things they were arguing about, nothing in the first act of the movie leads you to believe, or for that matter, I guess the second act, that they should be married. The thing that I was thinking about the timeline on, and I don't want to, it's a fictional movie, but they were talking about how she uses the shot for birth control. And I was like, doesn't the shot last 6 months?
There are different shots. There's also implants and stuff, which I'm all like, get an IUD, girl. But they didn't ask me.
And that was where I was like, how did she get pregnant if she had the shot at all during the timeline of this movie?
Yeah, and how was she not totally on her period the whole time of her honeymoon, which sometimes happens with that. But anyway, it takes a little while to get acclimated to that stuff sometimes. There were a lot of things that just did not bode well for the future of the Greys. And it was just, it was funny in a way. The other thing that also makes me chuckle a little bit is that he was like just so on her ass about that submissive contract. But yet apparently there's no prenup.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of wondering, is like when she scoots, like how much is she taking with her? But it was not to be. It's true love in the 50 Shades of Grey fashion. Jack Hyde, we'd alluded to the evil opposite. You spoilers. If I guess, turn it off if you really want to watch this.
Why are you listening to this?
You find out at the end of the film, but it's hinted at earlier in the film, had apparently been foster children with Christian Grey when he was too young to remember it, but Jack Hyde was older than him and remembered Christian from the household. and saw Christian as having the life he should have had, I guess, Marcia Gay Harden and her half-a-dimensional husband had adopted him instead. He learns a lot of skills for being they talk about like, oh, he's so damaged. I'm like, the kid went to Princeton,
right,
and was an editor and apparently a number of houses. Like, he's incredibly successful by anybody's measure. He's not billionaire successful financially, I guess, but that's a kid who came out of the system as a gem. But the movie makes sure to let you know, hey, those foster kids, they're trouble.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Good job, 50 Shades.
Yeah, there's nothing problematic about that. There's everything problematic about that. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's shameful. Anyway.
But yeah, the 50 the guy Jack, he knows how to break in and do corporate espionage. Apparently, he knows how to do. He's kidnaps. I'm sorry, I laughed when they showed the phone shot of Mia tied up.
I know.
That was okay.
Yeah.
He kidnaps the sister in what is the worst, most foilable kidnapping plot I've ever seen unfold on screen. Like, literally, the kidnapping plot from the movie Annie makes infinitely more sense than what occurred in this.
Yeah.
There were multiple points at which she could have blown the whole lid off of it by just talking literally to anybody else, a random person off the street.
Right.
But
I've never had a security detail or a bodyguard or anything, but I would assume in this day and age that there are secret, like little code words and stuff that you could use to innocently communicate that you're in distress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my mom's alarm company on her house had, kind of a protocol where you could,
right.
If you give the wrong code, they'll be like, oh, okay. And they'll send someone out.
Yeah.
And you could have, it was just like she was so compliant with what this guy was asking her to do.
Yeah.
And it was so strange that there wasn't some kind of backup system for, if Christian Grey is so paranoid that he's got a security detail for the whole family, then why didn't they have some P&P and policies and procedures in place to cover contingencies?
Yeah.
That everybody knew. When
they knew they knew a guy was out there, like, yes. But
yeah, it was so cliche.
But there was just no plot. It just kind of, there's very little actually to talk about, because this one just kind of limps along. She finds out at some point she's pregnant in what was like maybe the most creatively edited scene in the movie, where they actually were showing two different timelines overlaying each other for the first time in 3 movies, which went on for all of 40 seconds. But I was like thrown off because they actually were doing something that wasn't exactly boilerplate, 90s era TV sort of editing. Is there anything else to talk about in the plot?
The engagement of Kate and sexy gum-chewing brother.
Oh, man, I'd had a whole pot of coffee, so all I could think about was I had to go to the bathroom during that scene.
Well, you didn't really miss anything that was all that unpredictable. That was kind of a weird pendulum swing, because, they have this segment where so we kind of skipped over a couple of things. So in the sequence of events portrayed in the film, if I remember correctly, it went something like this: wedding, honeymoon. Jack Hyde sets off a bomb after extracting some files from the Gray supercomputer. The Grays come back to the States. Anna is introduced to her new responsibilities as rich dude's wife, which are like, would you like to get new wallpaper, and what should I cook you for dinner, ma'am, kind of stuff from the housekeeper. Then she goes to work, meets the hot author guy, played by TV's Supergirl, Superman, and then what else happened? It's just like these beads that are strung together to make a little story. And I think that one of the things that happens is that they decide. Hyde breaks into their penthouse and tries to kill her after she had been out to drinks with her friend.
Yeah.
Her friend Kate, who is dating Christian's brother. And then Anna goes to work. Christian goes to her workplace and says, "Baby, this has got to be all stressful for you. Let's go on a vacation." They go to a chalet that she had won access to in a charity auction in the previous film, because she was just so pure of heart. She could not accept the money that
for the car. Yeah.
And so she bought something from the Grace charity. And in a private moment I think it was at the chalet, she and Kate have a conversation. Kate's all like, "I think he's cheating on me." Whatever the brother guy's name is, I can't even remember.
I'll say Elliot, because I think it's Elliot.
That sounds plausible. He looks like an Elliot or a Trent. Somebody whose dad totally owns a BMW dealership. Anyway, so then Christian and Anna take a bath and they talk about it, and Christian's all like, "Yeah, my brother's a whore," and Anna's like, "Well, is he cheating?" And Christian's like, "Ah." And then they go out, and then he proposes.
Yes,
I think. That's
so there was an architect who was introduced as a sexual threat earlier in the film, and she is reintroduced at this point as an ex-girlfriend of Trent Elliott's.
Trent Elliott.
and that Anna sees out a window, who happens to just be there when they honestly hadn't even planned to walk through town, which they'd done on the spur of the moment. So instead of just thinking, "That's weird," she thinks, "Oh, they must be cheating," which I guess, I mean, why else would they anyway? But they are walking out of a jeweler, and at that point I was like, "Oh, I guess he's getting engaged, and this is their cute way of doing this, because this is 50 Shades of Grey." Yes, and never again do you hear from Gia Matteo, was I believe her name.
That sounds
plausible. They talk about this woman's breasts a lot, but I don't think they ever showed them.
Well, they didn't show them uncovered. Like, here's the thing. I did not think they were that big. They kept on talking about how big they were, and I was just like, I don't know why they're saying that. Maybe there was a cut scene. Maybe the extended edition is going to have some gratuitous titty. I don't know. But it was just like, even more gratuitous titty. Excuse me. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was just like, what a strange.
Yeah.
Like.
It was like in the script, but it was like, but here's the actress we have. Oh, well, nobody thought to pad a bra for the purposes of this film.
Seemed proportionate within the Hollywood body type,
And very specifically within the Christian Grey kind of clothes fashion model, sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
Taut, slim, not actually that buxom. But,
Yeah. But anyway, so they got the engagement was a little, but at the same time, so this is where you could kind of tell it was coming out of fan fiction. Was one of the things about fan fiction is often the coupling, right? Mm-hmm. Of we have to have had if we're doing Super Friends fan fiction, Apache Chief has to find love with the samurai or whatever. It's everyone by the end. People want to seem to write those happy endings, whether they're main characters or not. That's a fulfillment fantasy that pops up a lot in fan fiction. It didn't drive the plot forward. It didn't do anything. It could have easily been excised from the movie. Everything about the relationship, honestly, could have been. They could have just kept dating and been happy, and no one would have cared. But I kept waiting for the shoe to drop with Mia and Jose. That was apparently where they decided not to care.
Right. Jose has been downgraded from potential romantic rival to lapdog over the course of this narrative period, however long it is, and it's just like, wow, he doesn't even get to make out with anybody.
No,
he just hangs out with Anna.
He really is all about going on a vacation with the girl he was supposedly in love with for like 4 years of college, and going with her billionaire husband to, which actually, I think about like the mood I'd be in. I'd probably be like, yeah, screw you, I'll take the vacation and take your money. Yeah, maybe that was Jose's unspoken motivation in that sequence.
Right. Well, he did take some pictures while they were hiking.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's enjoying himself.
Yeah, he's letting go. He's living and letting go.
I was waiting for him to show up in the final sequence. Mia, I'm here.
Yeah, actually, what would have been also cool is if he had been taking family pictures of, at the,
Right. Yeah. Well, do you want to give away the ending?
Oh, no, not yet.
Okay. But yeah, so she finds out she's pregnant at some point. It causes problems. They clearly didn't get Kim Basinger back or weren't willing to pay her. So I don't know how the book goes. If I sound worn out, I am. It's been a long trek through 3 movies, but Christian goes to the ex-mistress off frame and returns, and she sees a text, and they have a huge blow up that some of it was understandable.
Yeah. His reaction to her revealing that she's pregnant was textbook what not to do.
Yeah.
Like, for real. Like, if you were...
Yes.
If you were
people, watch this movie for that, if no other reason.
Yeah. Like, there's a whole lot of what not to do, from consent issues to how to enter a marriage to, what to say if someone says that they're pregnant. The correct response, if you're not actively trying to get pregnant, is, how do you feel to the pregnant person? And then you take your cue from them. But she said, hey, I'm pregnant. And he's like, how dare you? That's so selfish. That baby's going to take you away from me, and we're never going to have sex again. And it's just like, wow, dude. That's not actually how it works. I mean, it kind of is. But
yeah,
I kid.
Yeah, they hadn't talked about it. He gets upset. That I could kind of at least not empathize with or sympathize with. I was like, okay, they've shown he's not exactly the most humane of people. I can see him doing what he did, which is go off and get drunk and maybe even talk to the wrong person.
Hint, your ex-girlfriend or mistress is always going to be the wrong person to talk to you about your wife's unintended pregnancy.
Excellent footnote.
Pro tip.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of burnt out on talking about the plot. Is there anything else to talk about with it?
I think that the last thing that we should probably talk about before we finally close the book on this is the abduction.
Yeah. Okay.
And I want to say that you made the fine point earlier that this was the most ridiculous fucking thing that has ever passed for a kidnapping scene. I've literally seen like Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons that had more logical approaches to the problem of how do you grab somebody.
Yeah, for a guy who was able to break in, apparently never get caught on the footage walking into Gray Core or whatever it's called, and burn up the server farm, which backups. So that's not how the cloud works.
It's not how computers work.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But yeah. So, but he doesn't know didn't think through his plan at all. The person he has helping him out, he is blackmailing. That person is going to turn on you. I'm trying to think of a hilarious metaphor here. I got none.
No, it's well. Why would you even need to blackmail someone? You could have given her the instruction of like, take an Uber to this address, or wire me the money in the Caymans, or any number of other things. Like, basically, this dude asks Anna to go to the bank, withdraw $5 million in cash, and bring it to him in a car that's being driven by this woman he's blackmailing.
Yeah.
And then she does these things.
Yeah.
Now
It's the HR rep, by the way.
Right.
So people know.
Right. Which, we totally believe in HR departments in real life, but in
This
HR...
one not working out.
Yeah, it's not so good.
Head of HR is sleeping with people and being, blackmailed.
Yeah, it's not great. But at any rate, she's driving this vehicle with her face clearly identifiable. And, Anna's even like, Liz, how could you?
Like, the minute she saw her face, she should have said, I'm going to get murdered. I'm not getting in this car.
Right.
Like, sorry, Mia.
Yeah. Sorry, sweetie.
I mean, there's no way you're not both getting murdered at that point.
Right. That's definitely, that's kind of... That's our reality. That's true. Usually,
Yes.
if you see someone's face and they're recognizable to you, especially as a person with a specific name and location and job, you're going to die.
Yeah,
that's pretty.
You're not going into work on Monday and going, yeah,
over the water cooler, like,
Yeah.
you look really familiar. It's like, yeah, I kidnapped you last week. What's up? It was very surprisingly hands-on for someone who was such a techno-villain earlier in the game, because if he really wanted that money, then I don't know, he could have said like, hey, buy a Bitcoin. I've realized that wasn't really a thing at the time that these were written, but he
could have had her throw the money off a bridge,
right, like onto a rowboat or something.
Yeah, and if he still wanted to murder her, which was his goal, blown up the bridge.
Yep.
He had bombs.
Yep.
He could have blown up the car.
Yep.
At that point, there were a lot of ways to handle it, none of which he did.
Yep. See, that's why he didn't manage to get into Harvard.
That part of the SAT. How do you successfully murder?
Yeah.
There were some good trailers before the movie. It had that going for it.
That's true, actually. Gotta say. But yeah, the whole thing was just very unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And they tried to make it, like, they tried to tie up a couple of, I guess, loose ends.
Somehow in investigating him, they found the grave of Christian's mother.
Right.
Made no sense at all. But
yeah, it was in a dossier about Jack Hyde, and I don't know if it was just like, hey, BT Dubs, check it out, we found your mom, or if that was unearthed during the search for information about Hyde, but it was just very strange, and they went and visited her gravesite, and of course it was raining, because obviously it had to be for it to be satisfying.
That shot actually made me crack up, because they filmed all of this in Washington State, where it is a rainforest, and very clearly they had to fake the rain, because it was sunny everywhere in the background. I was just like, oh, you poor bastards. Nothing worked out for you on this movie. The director on this movie, I'll maybe drop something in the comments on my blog, but he actually has some pretty good credits. I'm trying to remember what they were. And I was trying to figure out if the director of photography, the name went by, and I was trying to figure out if it was Jason Schwartzman's dad, who I think is a DP. So they got people who had like real chops, but clearly there's this mandate from E.L. James and company to say, no, we are sticking with the book. Do not improve on content. Which, at the end of the day, probably didn't serve things well. You know what I've realized we didn't talk about at all in this movie, which probably says something about it, was there was no shortage of sex in this movie.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to talk about.
Oh, yeah, it was super boring. Actually, there is one thing that was kind of... I found myself snickering a little bit. We know that our heroine has a tendency to overreact to certain things that happen in the Red Room.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the first film where she got like hit a couple times
I
with
had
a
a
belt.
flashback, yeah.
And she was just like, how dare you? Meow, I'm so sad. Meow, meow, meow. And then in this film, he attaches her to kind of a actually kind of beautiful metal lattice work that also serves the function of a St. Andrew's cross, which is like an X-shaped cross thing, and attaches her to that, and then uses a vibrator. He goes from her collarbone, nipple, and then labia, right? And he would turn it on, leave it there for a few seconds, and she was all like, oh, and then he would pull it away before she could have an orgasm. And he did it a few times, and then she just got so distressed that she used her safe word. Now, the reason this is funny to me is because, this all happened over the course of like 45 seconds, so it was not an unbearable amount of anything. I think some people would consider it charming foreplay. But also...
When she started yelling her safe word...
Right.
Yes, I was confused.
Right. It's like, sweetie.
I was like, y'all's just getting started.
That was a disproportionate response. And he was doing these things physically, and then verbally he was saying, like, this is how you make me feel when you don't do what I say. It's very frustrating, isn't it? Which, weirdly enough, like, that was actually sort of one of the few things that had ever come out of his mouth in her general direction that was kind of cute to me. I don't know what that says about me, and it's okay. But it was just like, he was, it was not unpleasurable. It was frustrating, but there was pleasure involved.
Right.
And so it could have been kind of cute.
Yeah. And that is the same sort of stuff he was saying to her earlier that was getting her turned on of... oh, I frustrate you, and you get all excited by that, which gets me in turn excited, and we get all spun up into a sexual tornado. Mm-hmm. And that's where I thought all this was going until and I was just like, oh no, here we go again. Yeah. They have to have them have conflict.
Right, and it's a dumb conflict. Like like out of all the problematic stuff that he does, this is where the line is. For real? Okay. But the other thing that is kind of funny to me from a kink perspective is that practice is actually kind of common in dom-sub relation. Like there's this thing called edging. And in some relationships, that's like part of someone's daily routine, is that they do that and they tease themselves and they don't have an orgasm until such time as their dominant gives them one or gives them permission to have one. That is like very widespread common stuff. And that was kind of what was funny to me, is like they have this palatial room that is devoted to all these implements, and they've obviously had a lot of sex, usually just kind of like basic bondage stuff, not even really all that complicated when you consider the vast array of possibilities presented. Uh-huh. And he's never done that to her before?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird to me, because that's really common. I can't emphasize enough how extremely common that is. And the fact it hadn't come up before, it actually kind of speaks to a certain generosity on his part. She's so accustomed to having orgasms in 45 seconds.
I'm not going to say the same thought didn't pass through my head. But yeah, that was probably the most interesting, partially just because it seems so bad, because of its badness in the context of the movie. But aside from that, I mean, there's some stuff they show at the beginning. I'm trying to even remember.
Long handcuffs that went from wrist to ankle.
Yeah.
Which is not all that next level. Like, honestly, I thought he would have brought a more elevated game.
They showed some stuff. They opened a drawer. And a
lot of butt plugs.
Yeah. And I
actually pretty big butt plugs for what that's worth.
Yeah. So they're one of the things we've mentioned, the pregnancy. Children are on the horizon in this movie. And it did make me wonder how E.L. James was going to think of how they would continue on with their sex lives, because they, whatever. But whether or not they were going to have an elaborate room in their house with toddlers running around. So I guess so. Maybe they'd keep an apartment in the city. I don't know.
Presumably they have staff.
Yeah.
And you know, presumably those staff will know that, you know, the kids don't go to the basement or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some kind of
sooner or later
code.
kids are going to be running right, key code there. That'd be a good idea. Yeah. Anyway, it was I was like, well, there you know, for the people who want more,
Yeah.
there's your challenge for the next movie.
Yeah.
Keeping the kids out of the red room.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, the other thing that just with the sex stuff that's kind of funny to me, you're totally right that it's not memorable or interesting. And the porn aspect of this really is not the sex. It's the stuff.
In this movie, 100,000%.
It's the stuff.
She get. I forgot one of the sex scenes was after she drove a car real fast.
Yeah.
And she came in 45 seconds.
Yep.
Deep thoughts we're having here.
We are giving this a lot more thought than the people who actually brought it to life, I think. But on the other hand, they're probably making more money than we ever will. So, you know.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a good place to end it on. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, either at SoundCloud or on the blog, in Twitter, or find Amy on the street and just start shouting the questions at her.
Yeah.
That's what
That'll work.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we're going to try and do this again for another movie. I'm not going to name it yet because
Step into the spotlight.
yeah, we're both pretty jazzed about it. And anyway, we will be talking to you guys again real soon. Have a good one.
Bye.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. I've been your host, Ryan Steens. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high quality content. So until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.